one thing we're quite proud of is that in the very first edition of the radar in 2021, we predicted ChatGPT almost exactly as it hit. So we know we're doing something right. I'm going to talk about my new role, which I've been in for almost 2 years now, in Geneva. And it has a very grand title here, Anticipating the Future, What's Next in Science. But first I wanted to just sort of say a little bit about what is GESDA, because you've probably never heard of it, which is completely normal. So we're quite a new organization. We were founded in 2019. Based in Geneva, founded by the Swiss government. And the Swiss are very interested in multilateralism, which is country-to-country cooperation, because Geneva is one of the home cities of the United Nations and the UN. But as you can probably tell from the news, country-to-country cooperation isn't doing so well at the moment, and it hasn't done for quite a few years. So the Swiss thought about, well, how can we actually help support cooperation across borders? And they came and they thought, well, actually science is both a sort of a problem and a solution. It's a problem because it moves very, very fast, and so this is why we have the need to anticipate what's coming next and the shifts in society, that these changes, the changes that might come with that, with technology being released. But also science is an amazing cooperative exercise where scientists actually collaborate across borders. So can we use science in diplomacy and try and cross the bridge, the gap between academic research and policymakers who are working with diplomats in the United Nations system? And so this They decided to found this institute or foundation, GESDA, so it's the Geneva Science and Diplomacy Anticipator. And this is our mandate, but just the third point is of particular interest because our sort of reason we exist is to try to widen the circle of beneficiaries for science and technology going forward. So how do we do it? We have 3 parts to what we do. First of all, we anticipate. So we work to think about the possible scientific breakthroughs that may come in the future over the next 25 years. We then accelerate discussions between policymakers and diplomats and scientists, as well as other stakeholders, to sort of say, well, so what? What are we going to do about it? And then finally, we can also incubate where there's real need for a particular intervention and no one's doing it, but diplomats really want it, scientists really want it. We can actually incubate that. And so we can translate into actual solutions. I'm going to be talking to you about the anticipating part because this is what I lead at GESDA. So how do we do it? Well, we go to the experts, so the researchers themselves, and we just ask them, what do you think you could be working on in the next 5, 10, and 25 years? And they look at us in horror. 5 years, okay, we can cope with this. Apart from the AI researchers, they're like, what, 5 years? But in general, 5 years is okay. 10 years starts to, they're a bit more uncomfortable, but they can give it a go. 25 years really requires people to think, step back from their own specific research and say, actually, as a field, where are we collectively all going? And actually, it takes a little while to settle in, but once you get into this way of thinking, researchers find this really interesting as a way of discussing their own work as well. And from all of these questions, we actually can create a map. And you won't be able to read the labels of the dots, but each dot is a different area of research. And this spreads really from sort of quantum computing to orbital environments, so space research, digital security, genetic engineering, future therapeutics, economics. So there's a really broad span of what we do, we look at. And this actually, I put a QR code there because this is all available freely online, so it's on a website, so feel free to have a look at it. But this represents the work of sort of 31 standing anticipation committees that we put together to really think about the future. Over 1,000 survey participants, so the wider fields that we're able to engage, and at the moment we engage researchers over 87 countries. And if you were to zoom into one of these dots, so I picked it, future food systems as an example, the committee, this is our committee, they're amazing, they're led by Nam-Hai Chua, who is a professor of plant genetics. And we ask them, we lock them in a virtual room and we say, you know, what do you think is going to come? And from this, we're able to write perspectives on both. So on the one side, we have, you know, current state of the art, where are the challenges in the field, right at the edge of the field at the moment, and what are researchers' dreams, and then to think about the 5, 10, and 25-year horizons that group of academics think is gonna the research and also the societal impact potentially could look like at that time. So just going back to the radar, you'll also notice that the dots are all in different positions around the radar. So how far out the dot is from the center is representative of something we call the anticipation potential of that field. This is combines 3 elements. So how early the research is. So if it's very early, people are not really talking about it, and actually this is something that we need to anticipate, spend more time anticipating, because it's not in the news, it's not really well known. How transformative the outcome could be, so for both science itself and research, but also society. And also the scope for action now, thinking about, you know, the word anticipate, it's really about doing something now in anticipation of the future. And so if you take, actually I'll go back, if you take all the dots that are sort of furthest out from the center, I've just listed them here, the top 8. And I thought I would go through some of the 25 time horizons that come out of a few of these. So unconventional computing was the first one, and I guess for researchers in AI, you know, they're thinking of the next algorithm, the next application in the next kind of months, years. But if you step back and look at computing as a whole, actually some of the big breakthroughs researchers are anticipating are going to be through our understanding of the brain. And so as we understand the human brain and how we make decisions, actually we make decisions much, much better in a lot of cases than what the Boolean logic that computers are based on now. And so if you could use the principles of neuronal decision-making and what we know from biology and take those principles and create computational machines with them, actually we're going to have something that's much closer to the sort of artificial general intelligence. For Healthspan extension, so this is a topic I think that sits in the discovery research portfolio, but researchers are thinking that you can actually repurpose antiviral drugs, so drugs against HIV, and instead of thinking about targeting pathogens that infect you, you could actually target your own genome and actually downregulate gene expression in order to slow down aging, and different elements in your genome, like which cause inflammation, which then also contribute to the phenotypes of aging. For consciousness research, researchers are quite scarily already working towards editing memories, and this is not just in animals or other organisms, but actually in humans. And they're working towards being able to eliminate memories. So if for sufferers of PTSD, for example, if you're able to alleviate some of those traumatic memories, this could be used therapeutically. But also, you could probably also enhance brain function. If you want to be much better at memorizing a new language, for example, this is also could be facilitated with the same sorts of technology. For infectious disease, perhaps a little optimistically, but it's always good to be optimistic. In 25 years, researchers think that we're going to have something they call predictive biology. So this is about combining all sorts of different data together into sort of real-time pandemic prediction and control. So this is where this integration of data is going to be really important for advancing the field. Behavioural science of groups is an interesting field of research. It's mainly driven by psychologists looking at what makes us feel like we are us and they are them. So we're kind of two different groups, and we know who our friends are, but we also know who those other people are as well. And actually, if you know how that works, that psychology works, you can start to intervene. And you can actually make people identify with sort of different groups or have different intergroup dynamics. And obviously this holds a lot of, there's a lot of ethical issues with this because this can be deployed through social media, for example. And if you think about voting and people's behavior as a society, this is really something that researchers in the topic are very concerned about and would like to raise to policymakers. And then finally, one of my favorite topics, synthetic biology, just because this is where I sort of came from. Researchers at the moment are really looking into, so synthetic biology is about building life from scratch. So rather than starting from an organism and modifying its genes and genetics for traits that maybe you want to see or eliminate, it's saying, well, let's just start from scratch. Let's just write the code of biology chemically from the beginning. And what researchers in the topic are thinking about is they would like to automate that process. So if you could write in, using something like ChatGPT, into an interface on one side, you could say, I would like an organism, a new organism, which eats sewage and lives in Euston Square Station and also glows bright blue. And you write this in, and then the lab, the automated lab, will be able to synthetically produce that organism and spit it out at the other end, and now you've got it. And so this also raises quite a lot of questions about who accesses this technology and for what. So that's a little bit of the sort of top trends that we saw. But I'm also in this very privileged position because I look at so many different topics of research, of seeing what the emerging, more transversal, so things that really span all of the research themes across different disciplines. And I've grouped these into sort of three buckets because these are also questions that GESDA is very interested in general. So the first one is, what is human? So as things are changing, so for example, this is extended reality, which is sort of, artificial, VR headsets is one way of extending your reality. But actually, cognitive enhancement is meaning that we can just directly put in chips into our brain. So what does that, if that chip then controls a second body, which is sort of robotic, is the robot also your body? Is it not? What's the human? What's not? And also an idea of decentralizing the human. So in Western scientific practice, we think of humans as having this sort of quite special, unique place in our ecosystems. But actually, the more that we learn about how the brain works and also these ideas of being able to enhance the human, this is kind of deconstructing this idea of human exceptionalism. The second bucket is about how do we all live together, and I think for this it then inevitably led us to thinking about, well, what's the future of the humanities and social sciences? Because these are the disciplines who have the tools to really think about how society could act or evolve in the future. And also the future of research itself, because different technologies are altering that as well. And then finally, how we live with our planet, which is becoming a very big question for everyone. There's sort of two projects that we have at the moment. One is Planetarized Humanity, and I'm very happy to talk about it, but I probably won't talk about it here just for time. But the other one I wanted to say was eco-augmentation, and we're in the very early stages of incubating this as an initiative, and I thought it would just be maybe for the next 2 slides or whatever, just interesting to see how you take that anticipation work and actually produce something quite concrete. So eco-augmentation, you will not know what it means because we made it up. So we wanted a word which encapsulated all of these ideas. So humans have always interfered with our ecosystem as long as we've been alive. And different components of ecosystems are always influencing each other. At the moment, maybe we do that quite passively, but can we think about having quite deliberate and strategic interactions in the future with nature for more resilient and sustainable, both social and ecological systems? So the way societies work, but also how we interact with nature and our ecosystems. And a lot of different disciplines are needed to really think about this question. So we called it a brand new word, eco-augmentation. So we brought together a group of researchers, around 30 scholars, and the outcome of this meeting, actually, I will say, we had a really big range of people in the room. One person was working, and this is, I think, my favorite research topic, on penguin feather microbiomes. So the creatures that live inside penguin feathers in Patagonia, which I thought was amazing. But also people who were creating synthetic plants, and they all came together to discuss, well, where's technology taking us when it comes to how we interact with our ecosystems and our influence over them? And the outcome was that there is an acceleration in a lot of different fields. They're providing new tools, and that it's going to be possible to confer new traits to ecosystems, to be able to restore them, but also to create entirely new ecosystems, if we want, with novel functions. In around 25 years, we will have the tools to do this. And so we also talked to a panel of philosophers, which were able to come at this question from a completely different approach, not the sort of technological, but really about what this meant for society and ethics. And then finally, we have an annual summit every October in Geneva at CERN. And this is the photo from this October, where we brought together people from, we had ambassadors together with scientists, with someone from Tahiti who is working on coral restoration. We had VCs from New York. We had insurance brokers. We had a huge range of different stakeholders came together, and we said, well, how sensible is this idea? Because this, from a scientific point of view, it's very exciting. From a sort of moral point of view, it's also exciting, to be able to try to do something in the face of climate change. But does this resonate? And luckily, you can tell from all the smiley, happy people, everyone loved it. So now we're starting to take this forward and engaging with communities around the world to really see how this means at a local level, as well as the more global level. With that, I'll say thank you. I put the QR code for the radar back up. Happy to take any questions.
Over the last year, we've articulated much more clearly that Wellcome's work covers the different modes of research and influence and engagement. And it really strikes me that actually this work is a great example at the intersection between all of those. So it's taking the research and looking forward and then understanding what is that going to mean in that influence world, so in terms of policymakers, and what does it mean to people on the engagement side. Can you tell us, from what you have a lot of Wellcome history in you, but tell us about how you think of this work and how it really brings together, maybe particularly the research and the influence components.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think One of the things that we've found is that scientists do work in, relative isolation. They talk to each other, but they have very little opportunity to actually think about, to engage with society, and also specifically with policymaking at the international level. And so when we approach scientists, coming from Wellcome, we approach scientists quite often, and people are always really excited to engage because Wellcome usually has they see dollar signs or whatever above their heads, and so there's a big draw for scientists. And I was quite surprised when I joined GESDA that actually I have the same kinds of response to this organization, reaching out to them, because people are so desperate to engage and actually talk about what they're doing because they are worried, or they have ideas, but they can see that the regulation and the environment, the regulatory environment and the policy environment is just not there to support it in the direction that they want to take it. And I think this is a really nice avenue for people to say, yes, my stuff is really impactful. No one cares about it at the moment, but this is it's really nice to be contacted and to have this raised up in the psyche of policy making. So to ask about consensus is an amazing, a very insightful thought you had. I actually have written across the top of our briefing document to our participants for these committees, we are not looking for consensus. And I think it's really important because we're not about closing down opportunities. This is not about saying, okay, we're all going to bet on this future. This is about saying, from this point, these are the radial directions that research could take, and we want to put them all out there. There's nothing sort of off limits for us to sort of be able to hold it all together. Yes, we do our best. So we have committees based in different areas. They're very broad. So we had an economist, we also had a string theorist, we had a biologist. So it's not that, we keep these as broad as possible, but ideas do come from elsewhere. And these more transversal themes are where we start to be able to really make some, for me, much more interesting, anticipatory insights. Because we can say, okay, well, these people are starting to talk about that, those people are starting to talk about that, but have they never really talked to each other? And so that's where we create the room and put them in. And I should say that's also quite a strength of being in Geneva, is that we're able to put people into a room where usually they're not allowed to be in a room together. So, for example, you may have people who are doing sensitive work for in the sort of Chinese Academy of Sciences, for example, who wouldn't be able to go to a meeting based in the US on synthetic biology. However, and vice versa. However, Geneva provides this neutral ground where company researchers as well, so people who are in the research department of IBM, can actually come and share and feel quite confident that this is going to be accepted. So. We haven't engaged lived experience experts specifically, but not much of our portfolio is specifically on sort of patient experience. It's quite basic research in a lot of the different topics. But we do engage with, for example, indigenous researchers around the world, and people from different coming from different religious backgrounds, for example, with different philosophies on, for example, the topic of consciousness is very different if you're a Japanese researcher versus if you are a UK researcher. So that's always really interesting to bring people together. But I would say that then we do have, in the sort of like the so what part, we definitely do bring in much more diverse perspectives from sort of broader society. And this is essential for our work because we need, if we want to start to build initiatives, we need to have all those perspectives together. And a lot of that discussion takes place at our summit, but not all of it. And we have sort of dedicated different streams for this as well.
As I understand it, and Sophie can correct me if I'm wrong, it's less about here is an accurate prediction of what the world will be like in 25 years' time, and more this is what we think we should be anticipating at this point, based on the information we have and the direction of travel and the understanding of the experts in the field. This is what we should anticipate, as opposed to here is what our prediction is, and place your bets now.
And I would just add as well that, because I think that's a really important point, that you know, these are the range of possibilities, and actually, what do we can actually have that discussion now about, well, which one, you know, where do we want to take it? So then that you can already be channeling towards it, rather than have to just wait for, e.g., market forces to sort of take precedent. There is a little bit of what's interesting to people, and you know, we start with things that are interesting to for example, that we're aware of. So we're a team of ex-academics that we're aware of that's going on in academia, but also from there going to different conferences, going to different, to speaking to different people, and we see, oh, there's a real potential here. We also have a mechanism to import things into the radar. So we have what we call invited contributions from individual researchers about a new sort of topic that we don't cover, and that can then the next year become a full committee, so it's sort of exploratory. And we also downgrade them as well. So solar radio, as things come towards the center of that radar, they become less and less anticipatory. So the community thinks this is not an issue anymore, so we can take them out. And then what comes out the other side and makes the decisions, I think GESDA does not make the decisions. So this is really important. We say that we try to act as an honest broker of information between the two, between two main communities of our stakeholders. So there's the researchers and the diplomats, but also for society as well. And so we make sure we just try to accelerate the conversations and the meetings between people, but we don't make any decisions ourselves because we don't have the legitimacy. But we do work closely with the UN, and so the UN organizations are representative of society, and they do have that legitimacy to make more decisions, and ambassadors do as well, because they are representatives of their state and the population. We really mean we start from research. And it's been interesting, actually, so in Switzerland, in German, the word for science is actually the word for research. So it's we use it interchangeably. So, and the society will always make predictions, will be speculative. I think there's really important work that needs to be done really with that blue skies prediction and you can say science fiction sort of scenario building. We say, well, we want to get the opinion of the people who are actually doing the work, and that this provides more of a domain-specific prediction, or it's not prediction, it's horizon of different possibilities. One thing we're quite proud of is that in the very first edition of the radar in 2021, we predicted ChatGPT almost exactly as it hit. So we know we're doing something right, but obviously not everything. And this is really about, and we update this radar every single year. So those committees meet every single year, and the surveys and all the anticipation potential is calculated every single year, because it is moving so fast, and so we can see how that's also changing.
I can be very brief. I think it's worth thinking about not just what makes good prediction, but what's good anticipation. is the point. And it might be that the things that we anticipate don't come to pass, but the only downside of that is that we've explored questions like what it means to be human. And I think that's a good thing to have done anyway. And I think in general, good anticipation is one that helps reinforce trust in science. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that just as acceptance of whatever's coming, but engagement in a way that ensures that people can shape what comes and what it means to them and what the limits are.
Please give a big thank you to Sophie and Martin for us.